Okay, good morning, ladies and gents. Fellow Nuffield scholars, it's great to be here, finally standing on the platform. Didn't really think I was going to get here with, well, I didn't actually appreciate the pressure, but also the massive benefit that the Nuffield would bring me and my business. And I'd like to firstly thank Nuffield for giving me the opportunity, the John Longwill Trust for their confidence in me, my business partners and farm staff for keeping the wheels turning while I was away, and especially my wife who supported me for years, and Jess and Giles who have kicked me when I needed it and kept a smile on my face as well. Especially Giles, he's the computer whiz. I got him to do Digital Creator as a GCSE and I knew it would come in handy. Problem was I tipped a cup of tea over the laptop just as we were finishing it off, so that put extra pressure on, but there we go. Okay, sustainable milk production. Why did I choose this topic? Because it meant that I could do anything I want in terms of dairy cows. Sustainability, nobody knows really what it means. But there was one chap who I think has actually got it nailed, and that was Tom Phillips at the One Farm at Massey University. So if you want to look at true sustainability in terms of the whole concept, I think he's the man to go and see. So I went off and looked at grazing systems, but also house systems and forage-based systems. I started off going to Denmark and New Zealand, Denmark and Sweden, looking at the red cow, automation, but mostly to see what crops they were growing and how they were utilising them on farm. I went to France looking at Lucerne with Eblex, Australia. When we were on the CSC in Canada, Terrier threw a hook to me, said I'm growing an inch of topsoil a year, and I thought I must go and see that, so I went and saw Terry. And then while I was down there in Australia, looked at composting and chelating minerals, grazing heights of swards, and their farming resilience down there. They have, as Jason said, they have an awful lot of problems down there in terms of the climate, and they are very resilient farmers down there. Then went on to New Zealand. Crossbred cows, high integrity feed, biological farming, plant diversity, and then grass breeding programs looking at festuloliums and endophytes. Then went on to America to meet one of my new milk buyers. Yes, Ali, we're doing it, we're getting it out there. So this was out in America. Biological farming, fast crop rotation, cover crops, first generation GM technology. So 68 farms, 4 universities, 3 biotech companies, 4 courses, 5 conferences, and quite a lot of agribusinesses on the way. This is what I came back with. Around the world, the quality of the feed that we feed our dairy cows is vital to the health and the longevity and ultimately the profitability of our cows, and it is vital for the future. What I found on progressive farms, the majority had adopted the Albrecht system, looking at the base saturation levels in the soil. Okay, so these are the percentages, or the desired percentages, regardless of any crop grown. These are the desired percentages that you should have in your soil. Certainly, especially the CalMag ratio. And what I found in Australia and New Zealand, a lot of the farmers there, the progressive farmers, were putting high levels of calcium on their land year on year to actually address this calcium-magnesium ratio, regardless of the pH in their soil. Calcium is king. And as Gary Zimmer said, it is the trucker that carries all other minerals and energy, and it will affect every physiological function in the soil and plants. And if there is insufficient available calcium in the soil, the health at every level of the food chain will be compromised. So just remember that and drink your milk. Okay, I was then keen to see these soil analyses are all very good, but it doesn't actually tell you how these soils are actually functioning. So I went on to a Regen Ag course, and we did some soil chromatography. Okay, this is when here we go. Okay, so the center of this chromograph shows the mineral zone. You then have the organic matter around the outside, or the middle band, and then you have the biology around the outside. And then you see all these rays. That is the interaction between the mineral, your biology, and the organic matter. I was quite chuffed about this actually, because I went to this Regen Ag course, and there were biodynamic farmers there, gardeners, professors. There's 2 other Nuffield scholars there, and quite a few hippies. But we were taught by a Spanish chap, and he came round and looked at my this graph of my 10 centimetre topsoil out of my best paddock, and he said, "Well, I think this is beautiful." And I went, "Yes, result." So I was dead chuffed about that. Yeah. Okay. Just a couple of more chromos. This was at 50 centimetres, so you can see out of the same hole, so you can see a larger mineral content, less organic matter, and actually less interaction between the biology, and the biology isn't working so much down there. So I thought, yeah, I can understand this, I can see why it's working and how it's working. The other chromo on the far side, it's a picture that I've picked up, and we talked about in the course, but this is basically in a mango grove where they've used a lot of agrochemicals. You can see all the leaf litter on top, and it's actually mummified the soil biology, and the biology isn't taking that organic matter down. So soil biology is key to our soils. Right. This slide, it really concerns me. It really concerns me. Okay, we only know 1% of the biology in our soils. Yeah? So all the synergies that occur in the soil, we only know 1% about that. Why is that? Why are we farming and we only know about 1% in our soils? Okay, we certainly know about some, and the rhizobia bacteria that fix nitrogen from the air, and in return the plants exude energy and carbohydrates back, and there has to be a symbiosis for that actually to work. And then the mycorrhiza fungi, if we actually feed that mycorrhiza fungi properly, it will create a natural web within the soil. And the fungi is vital to be transporting all the nutrients and water back to the plant. And the mycorrhiza fungi is vital in the phosphorus cycle and keeping that phosphorus moving within the soil, because it can get locked up very quickly. So the excessive use of highly soluble fertilizers will break these links. So we're actually losing some efficiencies if we're not working with the biology in the soil. Phyllis Titchin was a biological consultant from True Health in New Zealand, and she really focused my mind. There were loads of comments that she came out with, but when you talk about soluble fertilizers, what you've got to remember is that soil microbes are 1 part nitrogen and 5 parts carbon. So if we are putting too much nitrogen on these fields, these soil microbes cannot live. Okay, she also worked very closely with Dr. Paul Deltoft, and they were working very hard with competitive exclusion, so promoting good biology wherever they could. So what can we do on farm? This was in Australia, Pete Van Dorp and Nuffield scholar Adam Williams, and they were making compost. So they were using this. They were actually getting a carbon source, so they were having to buy in a carbon source. So this was wood chip. They were then scraping slurry off their collecting yard. They were then putting mineral in. They were, again, high magnesium soils, so they needed calcium. So they were actually putting calcium into the compost and other minerals. And by doing that, they were chelating the minerals, so they were making them more bioavailable. So when that compost hit the ground, they would see a far greater response to it. They were also adding some soil from their best paddocks, so they were inoculating their compost heap with their best soil biology, multiplying that up very, very quickly, because in the right conditions you can do that, and then they were spreading it over the land. By doing this, they'd actually dropped their nitrogen usage from 250 down to about 180, and they thought they could still go further on that. The guy down here, Jeff Williams, he was at Palmerston North in New Zealand, and he'd been a high input guy with a feeder wagon, and the The margins were just going out the gate. Other people were taking his profit. So he reassessed what he was doing. He looked at the base saturation levels, decided he could do something about it, and he bought this machine, the tone fert machine. So in there, he was putting in all his solids, mixing it with water, and then spreading it on as a suspension. So he was putting a carbon source in, which was humates. Humates, it's a bit like coal dust, but a bit more complex. He was then putting in a mineral source. So he was putting in calcium, he was also putting salt in there and some trace minerals, and then he was putting an energy source in there, which was molasses. So he was going on alternate grazings with this, and he was maintaining his production. So he was doing 16.5 tonnes of dry matter per hectare on 50 kilos of N, where he had been using 250 kilos of N. CO2. Plants have their stomata on the under the side of the leaf. There's a reason for that. Organic matter, as the soil microbes break down the organic matter, they release CO2. CO2 is a big limiting factor in terms of plant growth. If we kill off the soil microbes and we don't put organic matter into the soil, we're not going to get the CO2 release which these plants are built and designed to capture. Okay, this is Gary Zimmer. He was working with cover crops, really fast rotations, getting a cover crop in whenever he could, maximising photosynthesis and feeding and protecting soil biology as a matter of priority. Really good guy, and hopefully I've got him coming over in the spring to have a talk to us. Mob grazing situation. This was in Denmark. They were part of a savoury project. So you're going into a mature stand. So the plants are at a mature state. They've actually mobilised a lot of mineral, exuded a lot of energy back into the soil. They then trample about 25% of the crop back into the ground. The soil microbes then break down that organic matter, release the CO2, and up comes the plant, and you get a significant growth there. Plant diversity. Massive, absolutely massive. This was in Denmark. He was growing his own concentrate, combining lupins, spring wheat and peas all as one, and then heat treating that. This was Olaf Larsson, a botanist and Swedish dairy farmer, and he says plant diversity is actually the future for agriculture. I looked at GM very quickly, and I think there are some serious issues with this first GM technology in terms of the soil biology and the excessive use of chemicals. Second and third generation GM, I think we need to embrace it and investigate properly. But here in the UK, I don't think we should be using it. So conclusions, I'll let you read them. I'm running out of time, fast. Conclusion, biological farming is the future. Thank you.